particular society once more? I'm unable to recall it.
No, general and particular is not a society, it is a value. Juristic value would be for the entire society. If I am talking about, suppose if I am talking about the Indian society, the certain ethos of one caste is applicable to only that caste, that is not applicable to the entire caste. So that way we are looking at in terms of juristic versus particularistic. Alright?
This is also called this melting pot and salad bowl.
Melting pot is assimilation.
Assimilation.
And salad bowl is integration.
Okay.
और किसी कोई प्रॉब्लम है बोलो
Which manifests institutionalized pattern of inequality. So what does it mean?
Which means by birth now it has become you would be frozen in the same category of your forefathers. तो तुमने लास्ट में क्या लाइन लिखा है सबसे लास्ट लाइन क्या लिखा है कल सबसे लास्ट लाइन क्या लिखे पढ़ो relatively rigid in the matters of mobility. ठंड शुरू हो गई तो छत्तीसगढ़ में ठंड शुरू हो गई Now let's begin from there. I told you that some parts will be picking up would be from there in terms of looking at what are the features of the caste system. And then we'll also be talking about the certain dimensions in terms of Dalit consciousness, identity and assertiveness. And then we'll look at some other salient features of Indian society in terms of opening up the certain dimensions. And ultimately, we basically wanted to start in terms of secularism, communalism, regionalism, and empowerment. So, in a few days, in a week, whatever we could cover, we'll go from there. But before I proceed talking about this one, you just write down few points so that we can proceed from there. Last line was it's relatively rigid in the matters of mobility, right? Broadly, the features of caste system can be outlined as number one, hierarchical division of labor. Number two, principle of fusion and fission. Number three, endogamy. Endogamy. ENDO, endogamy means marrying in endogamy. Number four, ascriptive status. Ascriptive means by birth. Ascriptive status. Number five, notion of purity and pollution. Purity and pollution. All right? Pollution. Six, restrictions on food and drink. Number seven, civil and religious disabilities. All right, there. अब सुन लेते हैं बेटा. Look, we do not have to go so deep in terms of the caste system. Broadly, the last class when we started talking about the caste system, we begin with it how the caste system, which basically characterizes the Indian society and seems to be a real phenomenon, a real entity when we are approaching the Indian society. And any one of us, either we are from the Indian perspective or we are the non-Indian, whosoever approach the Indian society, the first feature of Indian society in terms of the stratification, ranking of the people, group of people one above the another, they basically came across the phenomena of caste, the ideology of a caste, the practice of a caste, with which the Indian social structure was basically tried to be understood, to be explained. Though I do agree that what was the nature of a caste in 18th century that has changed in 19th century, and the caste has also changed when you are looking at the 21st century. And the dual phenomena, anomaly, paradox is going on in terms of the caste system. If the modern means of communication, the new laws and legislations, the democratic rule, welfare policies, positive discriminations, somehow or other dissipated the very rigidity of caste system, then the caste associations, caste federations, a very close nexus between caste and politics. Same time, it has strengthened the caste system. It means, can I make a line? That anyone who will be looking at the caste system, trying to understand the caste system, will find that at the same time, if the caste is weakening, then caste is also strengthening. Attempts have been there to talk about the annihilation of the caste. And more precisely, I told you that when you're looking at Dr. Ambedkar, he wrote a book that is called Annihilation of Caste. We'll be talking about that one in terms of diagrammatic perspective, Gandhi versus Ambedkar. But can the caste be annihilated? And now recently, when we are looking at most of the political parties in India, the way the demand for the caste census has started emerging. And this very perspective of this very initiative which have begun in terms of the caste census, it seems too difficult that a caste would be annihilated in the country. If you allow me, anyone, I always say that anyone who is basically talking about the future of a caste, and somewhere they are becoming misguided optimist, that the time will come in India where the caste would be withering away, caste will be no more a category. I doubt whether they have understood the dynamics of Indian society or not. With every phase of change, caste has taken a new avatar. Caste has taken a new lease of life. And in this very perspective, the continuity of caste could be understood. So the second point we have written last class, that anyone who will be trying to understand the Indian society will have to focus on the two, that is continuity and change and continuity. So even the understanding of the caste has to be viewed in terms of continuity and change and continuity. Yes, change is taking place, no denying the fact. No one can deny that caste is not witnessing a change, caste is not witnessing a transformation. Yes, it is true. But we also will have to accept that caste is still the base of the social life in the country. And if the caste is still the base of the social life in the country, and more precisely when the caste associations, caste federations have started emerging out, not only protecting the interest of that particular caste which they represent, but somehow or other they have taken a very violent turn. Particularly in Bihar and others, we find about that how certain caste armies have emerged out. And atrocities against particularly the lower caste, that seems to be a reality. And I am sorry to say that though constitutionally we have abolished untouchability, but untouchability has survived the constitutional ban. Things have changed. The practice has changed. But anyone who will be looking at it, you might have realized the moment you look at the certain newspaper and others, you find about, every now and then you find about how the Dalit boy, girl, they have been segregated, they have been mistreated. It means somewhere the certain kind of segregation what the caste has taken place. That continues. And ironically, caste has today taken a formal character. It is displaying a formal character. I don't know about Raipur, I have not moved out. But certainly you will be finding about Vaishya Samaj, Brahman Samaj, Thakur Samaj. Alright. Now if such kind of associations are there, then caste is basically taking a formal character. And in this very perspective, we need to understand that how the caste is still a reality. Once again, I am saying that anyone who is trying to look at the future of the caste, and more precisely is thinking of that a time will come when the caste will die out. They have not understood the intricacies of the Indian society, more precisely the dynamics of the caste system. Almost in every society, either a reference to the Indian society or we are having the reference of the Western society. Almost in every society, wherever institutionalized inequality is found, more particularly when we are looking at the Western society, we find about the class, economic dimension, economic criteria in terms of the upper class, middle class, lower class. In Indian society, we find about the caste system. So the two institutionalized form of inequality which we are witnessing, comparing the Western society with that of the Indian society, is the class versus caste. But in almost every organized society, whichever the society seems to be organized, we find about a category which has been placed lowly at the end of hierarchy. Particularly, when we are looking at the Indian society, the lowly placed category seems to be untouchable. It is not difficult to write with a surety that in which date, which phase of history untouchables emerged out. That is somewhere lacking in history. But yesterday we tried to look at that how, if you are looking at a certain kind of texts, Dharma Shastra and others, on the basis of the Pratiloma model, we find about that how the outcast that was born, kept outside the Varna model, to whom we referred Panchama or Avarna. Avarna who has not been represented in the Varna category, who in the different historical phases have been known by the different terms. Like Ati Sudra, Nam Sudra, Chandala, exterior caste, depressed class. Simon Commission was the one who tried to schedule them. Thus the term scheduled caste emerged out, written in 1935 Government of India Act. And post-independently, the term in reference to the Article 341 which you picked up was basically scheduled caste. And I had quoted you that if you are looking at Dr. Ambedkar's view, Ambedkar says, who are scheduled caste? He says, scheduled caste are ex-untouchables. Ex-untouchables in reference to the Article 17 because constitutionally untouchability has been abolished. But today they prefer the term Dalit. A new kind of consciousness is emerging out, that is in terms of Suvarna and Avarna. History is being rewritten here. If you go through any history book, you will find about that it will be common sentence you will be finding about on the ruins of the Varna, caste emerged. Agreed. I am not denying that one. But if the Varna is gone, then we also need to accept that how, particularly from 60s, the way the new kind of political mobilization took place in the country. We find about the revisit of the term Varna in terms of Avarna and Suvarna. Those who were of a good Varna and those who had not been represented in the Varna category, and within which, particularly the Dalits, will have to find out the views of Ambedkar, Dr. Ambedkar and Gandhi. And I also want you to recall back the line of mine, last class I said, that any one of us who is looking at the Dalit politics And whosoever the political parties claim to represent the interest of the Dalits, they somehow or other seems to be indebted to the ideological triangulation of Jyotiba Phule, Dr. Ambedkar, and Periyar Ramaswamy Naik. And somewhere the mobilization, caste mobilization has started taking place. It seems today that now there is a certain kind of polarization in the society, Indian society, where the two upper caste and lower caste seems to be polarized into two different ends. Sometimes, which takes a very ugly turn in terms of the caste conflict. And a caste conflict is also a reality. And that way, most of the questions which we will be looking at in terms of annihilation of caste, caste association and federations. I don't know whether you have heard these two lines or not. If you are talking about BSP, late Kansiram Saab, he popularized one slogan, Tilak Taraju aur Talwar gin ke joote maro char. Look at this early phase. Tilak for the Brahmin, Taraju for the Banya, Talwar for the Thakur. And when you look at Lalu Prasad Yadav's first stint as the CM of the Bihar, he popularized the slogan, Bura Bal Saaf Karo. Bu for Bhumiyar, Ra for Rajput, Ba for Brahman, La for Lala. The four upper castes which are the Bihar, which are there. And that way the certain kind of caste polarization is taking place. And that very caste polarization is somewhere has resulted into the formation of caste associations and the federations, providing a formal character where every caste now seems to protect the interests of its own particular caste. And also taking a certain kind of rebellious attitude. If any kind of atrocities against this on this caste is being done, it basically believes in retaliation to that one. And that way you'll find about certain way in 2019 and others, you'll find about the questions in terms of caste associations and the federations. You'll find about the questions on annihilation of caste. And you'll also be finding about your opinion in terms of whether the caste will persist or not. You need to first think and then answer this kind of question. I don't know the question bank has been still supplied to you or not, so I'm not sure. Alright. Has it been given by the office? Alright. So, from there you will be looking at the certain questions. We'll try to look at that one. Alright. Let's begin or write down few lines more. Change the paragraph. I'm coming to Dalit, Gandhiji and Ambedkar and the caste and politics. In almost every organized society, there has always been a category placed lowly, L-O-W-L-Y, placed lowly in the social hierarchy with which prejudices discriminations, atrocities, exclusion are associated with. In Indian social structure, this lowly category L-O-W-L-Y, lowly category has been referred by different terms in the different historical phases. Different terms in a different historical phases
like Chandala, Atishudra, Nam Sudra, to whom Gandhiji referred to as Harijan, comma dekhe beta, to whom Gandhiji referred to as Harijan, and post-independently they were referred to as scheduled caste. Mind the line, beta. But today, your questions will come from there. Most of the questions are from here, from this line. But today, they prefer the term Dalit. In pursuance of new identity and alternative social structure. New identity and alternative social structure. बेटा एक डायग्राम बनाते हैं बेटा एक एक पॉइंट लेके चलेंगे बेटा गांधी की तरफ पहले गांधी जी की तरफ लिखेंगे नंबर 1 टेबुलर फॉर्म में ही viewed caste system from above he viewed caste system from above ऊपर से देख रहे हैं वो नंबर 2 गांधी जी पहले गांधी जी को समझ लेते हैं he considers caste to be an integral part of Varna system. Next. He wants change of heart. Amongst the upper caste Hindus. He turns the lower caste Harijan. And argues. Argues अच्छा word नहीं बेटा. And considers. Argue अच्छा word नहीं है. And considers that untouchability is a sin. SIN. Though he also draws our attention. उसी में बेटा. Though he also draws our attention right towards untouchability among the untouchables. Untouchability among the untouchables. Next point, beta. He argues that if Brahmin dines with DINES, if a Brahmin dines with untouchable, he is not a dissolve of priestly duties, but to do so he cannot be posed. And the last one, he considers that no work is superior or inferior rather all works are sacred. ठीक है बेटा. ऑपोजिट साइड डॉक्टर अंबेडकर की तरफ आते हैं. नंबर 1, ठीक है. He views caste system from below. ठीक है बेटा. इसको ना सबअल्टर्न पर्सपेक्टिव बोलते हैं. एक स्कॉलर है बेटा रंजीत गुहा, है ना, उन्होंने सबअल्टर्न पर्सपेक्टिव को फेमस किया. सबअल्टर्न का मतलब हो गया लुकिंग हिस्ट्री फ्रॉम बिलो. अभी क्या कर रहे हैं, ऊपर से देख रहे हैं. वी आर लुकिंग हिस्ट्री फ्रॉम बिलो. इसको सबअल्टर्न पर्सपेक्टिव बोलते हैं. तो अगर ऐसा पूछा जाए कि व्हाट पर्सपेक्टिव अम्बेडकर ब्रॉट, तो अम्बेडकर ब्रॉट द सबअल्टर्न मार्क्सिस्ट पर्सपेक्टिव टू द अंडरस्टैंडिंग ऑफ कास्ट सिस्टम. ठीक है, पहला मार्क्सिस्ट बोलते हैं हम लोग अम्बेडकर को. ठीक है, यहाँ पे सबअल्टर्न ALTERN. सबअल्टर्न का मतलब होगा लुकिंग हिस्ट्री फ्रॉम बिलो, राइट. एंड प्रोवाइडेड, उसी में उसी लाइन पे, एंड प्रोवाइडेड, कंटिन्यू करो उसको. एंड प्रोवाइडेड द ब्रोकन मैन थियरी ऑफ हिस्ट्री Number 2, he disfavors the term Harijan as he considers it to be a soothing palliative. SOOTHI, soothe. Soothing palliative. PALLIATIVE. Palliative, which distorts the hardcore reality of caste, which distorts, distorts, distorts the hardcore reality of caste. Next. कितना हुआ बेटा? So, next. He considered caste to be product of Brahmanism mind the line and favors annihilation of caste, ANNI. Next. He favors state. रिजर्वेशन पॉलिसी आगे बेटा, ये सेंटेंस हमको पेपर 2 में ले जाएगा. He favors state as an instrument for the politico-economic upliftment of this category. Second last beta, he considers that the work done by untouchables is most dehumanized and not held in a same respect, held, HELD, in a same respect. And the last one beta, he argues that caste was basically class which has lost its open character and has in which some have closed the doors and some have found the doors being closed. Some have closed the doors and some have found the doors being closed. ठीक है, पढ़ो तो बेटा, देखो एक बार, उसमें भी है, कास्ट में भी सेग्रीगेशन होगा ना. ठीक है, बोले ऐसे चलाएगा, एसी फैन कुछ भी चलाए यार. हाँ मेरे तो लॉक कर दे इसको. It means he is not looking it from the perspective of the lower caste. Look at, he does not belong to that caste. He has never witnessed such kind of discrimination what Dr. Ambedkar has witnessed. So Ambedkar belongs to them. Caste and class and caste. Class is basically economic one, objective criterion. Caste is subjective criterion. Okay? When you say about upper class, middle class, lower class, so you remember only one word, objective economic criterion. Okay? Up two lines I am opening up together. Some lines which you have now come to know in terms of the Dalits. And I hope the questions are there in terms of Dalit consciousness, Dalit assertiveness, Dalit politics. It could be done. Okay. Yet another dimensions that we'll have to talk about, which we talked about last class. I'll go a bit deep into it so that you could dwell with me. That the kind of new consciousness that is emerging over the Dalits, somehow or other, it has brought a new kind of mobilization in the Indian society. When you're looking at the very perspective of the caste reality in Indian context. However, today our any understanding of caste, characterizing the social structure would not be completed unless until we talk about that how there seems to be a nexus between the political and the social structure. So that way we'll have to talk about caste and politics. I ask you to recall back the two lines, Pandit Nehru and Dr. Ambedkar. Pandit Nehru believed that out of the two institutions, caste and democracy, only one would survive. Democracy is antithetical to caste. And I told you that how the Kaka Kalkar committee was rejected in 1953, the first backward class commission. Even when looking at the statement of Dr. Ambedkar says that our any attempt to build Indian democracy on the basis of caste would prove futile, unquote. But I told you last class that I'm sorry to say both have gone wrong. Whatever they had anticipated, whatever they had imagined, whatever they have said, it did not fructify, it did not come to the reality. And it was believed that with the advent of democratic rule, with the new constitution, based on the equality, democracy, sovereignty, secularism, somehow or other, the anomalies which have persisted in the courses of history, that would be addressed. And we feel that with this constitution, equality would be achieved. Equal guarantee of the rights backed by the constitution, certain laws, legislations will be able to tactfully address the inequalities which were prevalent in the society. But the moment the new political structure in democratic perspective emerged, it found a new lease of life, new lease of support from the caste perspective. Knowingly, I'm not saying knowingly, unknowingly. I'm not judging that one. But the reality emerged that a close nexus between caste and politics emerged right from the independence. And mind me dear, the relation between caste and politics was not new. It was earlier as well. But it became more obvious, it became more crystallized. If the politics to sustain itself started drawing the support from the caste, then every caste also realized the benefit of being politically active. And a phase-wise caste entry in a politics began. If you draw your pages from the history, particularly, you start looking at that the early entry to the politics was basically by the upper caste. Brahmins, Kshatriyas, or the big zamindars, big cultivators. In a second phase, we find about that the certain caste who stood parallelly to the dominant one. They started challenging the hegemony of these, and they started making their foray into the political system. But the third mobilization that took place in the Indian society, Indian politics, when the lower caste collectively, combinedly, they realized that they will have to assert themselves. And this very relation of asserting themselves in the political system and be politically viable completely polarized the relation between caste and the politics. And thus, if at one hand, casteization of politics took place, then on the other hand, politicization of caste took place. The way the Dalit consciousness is emerging out, the way the retaliations is emerging out, the way the caste census is emerging out, I doubt. And you would agree with this line of mine, that whether all these politicians who are supporting the caste census are really driven by social engineering based on caste. The caste census seems to be basically a new political tool in the hands of the politicians to be used in the elections. The way it has been basically disguised by the concept social engineering, adequate representation, I doubt whether it will emerge out or not. But this is the one reality. And that way, the caste and politics relationship has started emerging. Yet another, यहाँ तक ठीक है बेटा? Yet another cardinal feature of Indian society apart from the caste is the joint family. And let me not forget this sentence, that when we are talking about the caste system does not seem to be a typical feature of the Hindu social organization. Caste-like features have been found in non-Hindus as well. If we are talking about the Christians, if we are talking about the Muslims, we find about the caste-like structure over. I remember one of the British scholar, J.H. Hutton, he made a statement. He said that two religions based on equality, Christianity and Islam, when they entered the Indian soil, the elements of caste were in the air, from which they could not escape themselves. And if they could not escape themselves, caste-like elements also emerged among them. Thus, the point which I am talking about the caste system has not to be merely viewed as a part of the social, Hindu social organization. Caste is found among the non-Hindus as well. And similarly, when we are looking at another cardinal feature, that is the joint family. I'm sorry, somewhere you will find about writing that anyone who is approaching at the Hindu social organization will finding about the prevalence of the joint family. No, cutting across the religion, caste categories, joint family could be found. I repeat two lines and then I'll move from there. Family in India means joint. Ancient India पढ़ा है थोड़ा बहुत, उधर लैंड ग्रांट सिस्टम था ना? The land which was granted, हंस लिया? अब थोड़ा सा सुन ले बेटा. Do you know that the land which was granted was not to be sold off, was not to be fragmented? ठीक है. अब एक लाइन में बोलू बेटा, इफ लैंड प्रोड्यूस ज्वाइंट फैमिली, मशीन प्रोड्यूस न्यूक्लियर फैमिली. है न्यूक्लियर फैमिली क्या हुआ? मशीन हुआ तो इंडस्ट्री बैठ गए. जहां जहां ज्वाइंट फैमिली के थे लोग बाहर बाहर निकल गए. इट स्टार्टेड हैविंग अ प्रेशर ऑन द ज्वाइंट फैमिली एंड द पीपल मूव्ड आउट. हो गया ना. अब तो तुम 2014 का क्वेश्चन आंसर दे सकते हो. That the life cycle of joint families seems to be more economic than social. यही तो फैक्टर्स ऑफ डिसऑर्गेनाइजेशन लिखना है बेटा, लिखना है ना. ठीक है. अब फिर से सुनो. I repeat the line which I said last class. That the term joint in a joint family is a colonial construct. Co-parcenary law, याद आया? And thus, when the comparative studies on the family began during the colonial rule, there was one advisor of Governor General Henry Maine, who basically can be credited to present joint family on the world map. A unique feature of Indian society, characterizing the Indian ethos. Joint family characterizes the Indian values and ethos. And what were the certain features we talked about? The features we talked about, generational depth. ठीक है. वैसे तुम्हारे किताब में लिखा होगा, people of several generations live together. है? उसी की जगह मैंने नहीं, कितना से जनरेशन मुझे नहीं मालूम. That's why I'm saying generational depth. Karta as a head of family. Right? Karta is being referred to a male. But if you look at the rulings of the Honorable Delhi High Court, it said that even a female could be a karta of a joint. Now look at a change. Undivided property. What the change which you have witnessed? The change which you have witnessed, that if all the males were the legal heir of the property, today the daughters have also their part in the property. Getting me now? This change has come from the legal legislative perspective. The food cooked from the same hearth. Hearth means kitchen. And people living under the same roof. And one more that I still consider to be a reality in the contemporary times, that is called ritual corporateness. Ritual corporateness means we still find about most of the people living in the nuclear families, if a certain kind of important festivals comes out, they will come to the main family and they will try to celebrate together. Okay? However, industrialization, urbanization, which increase geographical mobility, growing individualism, legislations, somehow or other brought pressure on the functioning of the joint family. People started moving in search of the new jobs and wherever the expertise could take. This very geographical mobility of the people brought by industrialization, urbanization, made the people to move to the different other towns and cities, and the joint family broke down. Now the one debate that has to be done, यहाँ तक ठीक ना बेटा? Now one debate has been done. ये बहुत अच्छा लगता है सुनने में. It seems very good when you say, what are the factors for the disorganization of a joint family? Now the first question comes out, has a joint family disorganized? मेरा क्वेश्चन क्लियर हुआ? I live in NCR. Me, wife, and my son. My main family lives in Jamshedpur. Am I part of that joint family? It means even though people living in a nuclear family, if they are able to perform their obligations toward the main family, alright, it should be considered to be part of the joint family rather than looked in terms of isolated nuclear family. Clear that? Today in the industrialized world, it is not possible that the people of the several generations will live together. Possible नहीं है बेटा, सब लोग एक साथ अब रह सकते हैं, एक ही छत के नीचे रह के एक ही किचन से खाना खाए, ये पॉसिबल नहीं है बेटा. क्लियर है? लाइन को ठीक से सुनना. zombies. Joint family as such has not declined. Cut-off point of jointness has declined. पहले बहुत लोग एक साथ, एग्रीकल्चर था, फ्यूडलिस्टिक था, so 7 generations, 5 generations people are living. That generational depth has decreased. Joint family has not decreased. Clear है? And you would also be surprised to know that if you say urbanization is the factor of disorganization of a joint family, your census says that the number of smaller joint families has increased in urban India. हो गया ना? ये तो बड़ा उल्टा बात हो गया. एक तरफ तुम बोलो कि urbanization is a factor for the disorganization of a joint family, and your census is saying that number of a smaller joint families is increasing in urban area. That's why I am saying that if any question, apart from the certain questions, apart from this economic dimension, if the question comes on a joint family, all right, please make it a point that you have written a line that joint family as such has not declined. The cut-off point of jointness has declined. Clear है? सुन लो मेरे भाई, 3 लाइन बोलूंगा. If feudal India, caste and land produce joint family, then modern India, class and machine produce nuclear family. Alright? Though 90% of people living in a nuclear family, alright, they have the mentality of jointness. क्लियर है बेटा मेरे पास? और तुमसे जो क्वेश्चन पूछा है इकोनॉमिक फैक्टर, उसमें इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन अर्बनाइजेशन को डाल देना है. ठीक है मेरी बात यहां से? ऑलराइट? हो जाएगा मैंने? Let me pick up yet another feature. And more precisely, any one of us, no denying about it. When we talk about the modern India, we talk about industrial India, we talk about the urban area, urban India. Not more than 34% of, 32 to 34% of Indian population lives in urban areas. It means 66 to 68% of population still lives in the rural India, making us realize that our any understanding of Indian society would not be completed unless and until we talk about the rural agrarian society. Though when the Western discourse on urbanization began, where the rapid industrialization and urbanization has started taking place, in most of the early writings, rural and urban were viewed as a dichotomy to one another. You understand? Dichotomy, opposite of one another. And the term that was popularized is called rural-urban dichotomy. That there is no link between this, they are altogether two different worlds. But particularly with the works on the Mayan culture in 1930s, and more precisely the Chicago tradition in urban sociology, geography, idea surface, no. There is no sharp line within which we can say from here the rural begins, rural ends. From here the urban begins, urban ends. There is always a relationship between rural and urban. मुझे मालूम नहीं आपने कभी अर्बन का डेफिनेशन देखा है कि नहीं सेंसस का. 75% of population engaged in non-agricultural work. है ना? Having a minimum population of 5,400 square density kilometer का 75% of people engaged in a non-agricultural work. इसका मतलब हो गया बेटा 3/4 non-agriculture में. So that also means that the rural people, agrarian people are not producing for themselves, but they also produce for those who do not produce for themselves. Right? So you cannot look rural and urban as a two dichotomy. Rather we have to look at a rural and urban in terms of continuum. तो वर्ड क्या यूज करेंगे बेटा? रूरल अर्बन कंटिन्यूम. ठीक है. One of the important feature of rural agrarian society characterizing the socio-economic system was called Jajmani system. Jajmani system is basically the perspective of understanding caste interdependence in the rural agrarian society. When I say caste interdependence, H.M. Weiser, one British scholar, who worked in the Karimpur village in UP and came out with a book that is called Hindu Jajmani System. Though the term caste interdependence was termed differently in a different areas of the country, but with the publication of this book, one generic term that was used was basically called Jajmani system. And when I say caste interdependence, we have to understand the two concepts. The caste which receives service is called Jajman. The caste which provides service is called Kamin, K-A-M-I-N. It means this is basically a patron-client Jajman-Kamin relation. Which could be hereditary, which could be patrilineal. चार्ल्स मेटकाफ का नाम सुना है कभी? Have you ever heard the name चार्ल्स मेटकाफ? मेटकाफ भवन, जितना डिफेंस वाला भवन सब होगा उसका नाम देखोगे मेटकाफ भवन होगा. है बड़ा बदमाश. उसने एक लाइन बोला, इंडियन विलेजेस आर सेल्फ मेड रिपब्लिक. Civilizations will come, civilizations will go. What remains is the self-sufficiency of the Indian village. पता नहीं आपने गौर किया नहीं किया, कौन किंग है इसे मतलब नहीं है विलेजर्स को. भाई उसको तो टैक्स ही देना है ना. एक्स आया, वाई आया, जो राजा आया है उसे उसको मतलब नहीं है. भाई मुझे रेवेन्यू देना, मैंने दे दिया. ठीक है. अब जजमानी सिस्टम को डिफरेंस यहां समझना क्यों मैंने बोला. There could be possibility that Jajman and Kamin could belong to the two different villages. होगा ना बेटा. जजमान एक गांव का हो सकता है, कामिन को सर्व करने वाला दूसरे गांव का होगा. So self-sufficiency of Indian village, which was propagated by the certain British scholars, was demystified with the work of Jajmani system. क्लियर है मेरी बात यहां से? अब एक लाइन को ठीक से और समझ. Jajmani system also reflects immobility of labor and capital from the village. गांव का पैसा गांव में ही रह गया, गांव के लोग गांव में ही रह गए ना. ठीक है. 2020 में लॉकडाउन हुआ था मार्च में. क्या जजमानी सिस्टम का रेलेवेंस दिखता है? मैंने यूज किया पैट्रन क्लाइंट रिलेशनशिप. नो जजमान कैन लीव द कामिन्स इन अ लर्च, नाइदर द कामिन्स कैन लीव द जजमान इन अ लर्च. It is not merely an economic relationship, it is basically social security. All right. So if any time of emergency comes out, Jajman and Kamins will have to help one another. And that time the idea surfaced in some quarters that had the Jajmani system been continued, the reluctance in part of the urban migrants to return back to their village could have been dealt with. ठीक है, दो डिबेट शुरू हुई बेटा, एक डिबेट शुरू हुई और दूसरा डिबेट जो था वो मनरेगा का शुरू हुआ कि कैन सच काइंड ऑफ प्रोग्राम बी इंट्रोड्यूस्ड टू द अर्बन माइग्रेंट्स. क्या अर्बन माइग्रेंट्स के लिए कुछ गारंटी करेंगे, मिनिमम गारंटी, कि ये जो पैनिक हो गया था कि हमको अब जॉब मिलेगा नहीं, दैट कुड बी डन. गेटिंग मी नाउ? विल बी पिकिंग अप इन आवर डिस्कोर्स इन डे टू कम. फिर बोल रहा हूं, जजमानी सिस्टम इज अ पैट्रन क्लाइंट रिलेशनशिप. जो फैक्टर है बेटा, द फैक्टर्स विच लेड टू द डिसऑर्गेनाइजेशन ऑफ अ ज्वाइंट फैमिली are the same factors will be picking up for the disorganization of a Jajmani system, along with legislations, welfare measures, positive discrimination. ये सब डाटा हम ज्वाइंट फैमिली में यूज नहीं करेंगे, यहां करेंगे, right? And in that way, what are the factors which has led to the decline of Jajmani system could be talked about this one, all right? मार दो मास्टर को. हाँ, मास्टर क्या, तो नया मास्टर आता रहेगा, वारुदुर कसको तब. पूरा इंडिया में ऐसा कोई इंस्टीट्यूट नहीं है बेटा, सिंगल इंस्टीट्यूट जिसने एसी और पंखा टीचर के पास रखा है. कहीं चले जाओ तुम, दिल्ली का किसी भी टॉप इंस्टीट्यूट में चले जाओ, एसी और पंखा किसके लिए है? स्टूडेंट्स के लिए, जो पैसा दे रहा है. साले मास्टर ने कहा तो पैसा लेके क्या करोगे? नौकरी करते हो तो why don't you two people come fresh in the class? Huh? रिपीट करता हूं एक बार, तुम मुझे 2 घंटा नहीं सस्टेन कर सकता, मैं बोलता रहूंगा तो तुम्हारी औकात नहीं है अभी. Ancient archaic, chronicle of events, society, the society in which we talked about diversities, tradition and modernity. Then we pick the caste system, joint family, Jajmani, all right? Somehow or other. Either we're talking about the caste system or either we're talking about the joint family or Jajmani system. It basically links itself with the caste, isn't it? But one of the most important salient features, apart from the caste in the Indian society, would be the presence and persistence of tribals. Considered to be the autochthons. Autochthons का मतलब original जो है. They are considered to be the real inhabitants of the country. Today, if you're looking at the new census, if you're looking at the new kind of analysis, the tribals in India, they constitute 8.06% of the total population of the country. And it will always be advised by me that if there is any question comes in a caste and tribe, then you basically try to look at caste and tribe continuum. That is called tribe caste continuum. इसको ले जाओ बेटा. Since time immemorial, the tribes who have inhabited the country, they have also had the interaction with the outside world. Broadly, when we are looking at, तुमको जो क्वेश्चन पूछा है बेटा, एक क्वेश्चन कल मैंने बोला था कि व्हाई ट्राइब्स आर कॉल्ड शेड्यूल ट्राइब, व्हाट आर द अदर कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल मैनिफेस्टेशन टू सेफगार्ड द इंटरेस्ट ऑफ द ट्राइबल्स. But before we come to the certain constitutional manifestation and others, let's talk about how the interaction between a caste and tribe has taken place. Broadly, when we're looking at the policies of administration toward the tribals in India, then there are the three policies through which the tribal administration, development and other could be understood by us. The first perspective is basically called the policies of segregation or isolation. When I say policy of segregation or isolation, more favored during the colonial rule, and somehow or other it has been accused that colonial administrators basically wanted to keep the tribals away from the caste system, the broader society. बस्तर के रीजन की तरफ चलेंगे, इधर आप लोग जहां बैठे हुए हैं, उधर आपको बहुत सा वेरे एल्विन सोसाइटीज दिखेगी. आई कोट वेरे एल्विन. नेशनल पार्क थियरी बोलते हैं बेटा उसको. He said the tribals are the noble savages. They should be kept as they are. And he wrote a book that is called Loss of Nerve. He says around the globe we have found it that whenever the non-tribals have entered to the tribal belt, the loss of nerve has taken place. Their respect on land and forest has not been protected. And thus he basically came out with the national park theory and favored the policy of isolation and segregation. If any development and roads should be constructed in a tribal area, it should be for the benefit of the tribals, not the other way around. What we have found about, if the roads connectivity development has taken place, the tribal have been more exploited. However, one of the associates of Gandhi ji, Bappa Thakkar, A.V. Thakkar, who came very heavily on Vera Elvin, and he says that Vera Elvin was an anthropologist. He says it seems that the anthropologists want to preserve the tribals as a Jew specimen. So Jewification and Mizoomification concept emerged out. Since anthropologists are more concerned with the tribal society, so they want basically to keep the tribals as a Jew specimen. Since time immemorial, there has been ongoing interaction between caste and a tribe. And thus, instead of the policy of isolation, segregation, the policy that emerged is called policy of assimilation. गौर करना बेटा, कल मैंने assimilation बताया था. After a very long hiatus of isolation, when the tribal societies were opened up, and when they came in contact with the outside non-tribal, alright, their tradition was destroyed, their culture dissipated, alright, impact of other religions started emerging up, crisis of identity emerged. But post-independently, the policy which was favored is called policy of integration. I quote two lines, two statements of Pandit Nehru. While addressing a crowd, tribal crowd in the Nehru, Northeast, he made a statement that I don't know whose lifestyle is better, yours or ours. But I'm quite sure, in certain ways, your life is better than us. Mind the last line, beta. He further says that I want you to preserve your culture, but I also want you to ensure a participation in a nation building. And thus the policy that emerged is called policy of integration. Clear है मेरी बात यहां से? In this very perspective, when you're talking about the policy of integration, even the constitution makers, when they started looking at the constitution, they basically wanted to integrate the tribals without interfering into the tradition and conventions, their culture. And thus, in a reference to Article 366(25), and more precisely Article 342, along with the 5th and the 6th schedule, the tribals were classified constitutionally. Clear है? अब दो लाइन को ठीक. Since they have been classified constitutionally, hence they are referred to as scheduled caste, scheduled tribe. This was the question. Clear है? But not forgetting, who are tribes in India? It is still a politico-administrative concept. What a sociologist, what an anthropologist consider to be tribe. Not necessarily that would be entertained unless and until, in a reference to Article 342, by promulgation, President declares any area to be scheduled area, having consultation with the governor or the chief minister, head of the state, all right, and declares that area to be scheduled area. The people living under it would not be called scheduled tribe. Clear है मेरी बात यहां से? इसीलिए दो वर्ड याद रखना है बेटा, that the definition of tribes in India is politico-administrative. क्लियर है? और वो शेड्यूल इसलिए है कि आर्टिकल लाएंगे. ठीक है, तो थोड़ा थोड़ा लिखो, जल्दी करो. कास्ट एंड पॉलिटिक्स में नहीं करवा रहा हूं. हाँ ठीक है, ज्वाइंट फैमिली हो जाएगा. जजमानियों का ट्राइब्स पे आ जाओ. कल तुम दो दो लाइन लिख लो ना. एक अलग से लिखना ज्वाइंट फैमिली, कास्ट के बाद लिख ली हो, जजमानी सिस्टम लिख ली हो. राइट, अब अलग से लिखो. Yet another cardinal feature of Indian society, I am not giving that note to you. Yet another cardinal feature of Indian society is the presence of tribes in India who constitutes approximately who constitute approximately 8.06% population of the total population, or total Indian population लिखना बेटा. 8.06% of the total Indian population. Though, like the mainstream society, they also reflect a widespread diversity in terms of geographical spread, racial composition, linguistic affiliation, racial composition, linguistic affiliation, economic activities, and the level of cultural contact. Level of cultural contact. However, we need to remember number one. करेक्ट? मैं स्लो हो रहा हूं, ठीक है, पढ़ना भी है. Unlike the Western counterpart, where we have witnessed a sharp distinction between white colonizers and tribals. White colonizers and tribals. We do not find that in Indian context. We do not find that in Indian context. ब्रैकेट में लिखना बेटा, perspective of tribe caste continuum. Tribe, perspective of tribe caste continuum. Number 2, in the Indian context, there pertains the problem of definition of tribe. All right. The social scientist define tribe as a human social organization characterized by the tradition of common descent, DSCNT, common descent, language, and culture. However, the definition of tribe in India is politico-administrative in nature. गौर करना लाइन्स को बेटा, तुम्हारा क्वेश्चन यहां से है. आफ्टर इंडिपेंडेंस the constitution makers wanted to integrate tribals into the mainstream, without interfering into their customs and traditions. Thus, they classified tribals under Article 366 and precisely 342, 366 and precisely 342, along with fifth and sixth schedule, thus tribes in India are referred to as scheduled tribe. Some other constitutional manifestations are, उसी में बेटा क्वेश्चन ही है वो. Some other constitutional manifestations are, मैं आर्टिकल दे रहा हूं तो अपना कंस्टिट्यूशन देख लेना. Some other constitutional manifestations are Article 14, 15, 15(4) मत भूलना बेटा. 15(4), 16, 16(4), 17, 17 नहीं, 19, 21 बेगार, 23 चाइल्ड लेबर, 38 social justice, 46, 243 commissioner, 332 नहीं पहले, हाँ 332, 334 merit, 335 civil caste commissioner, 338, 342 and 366. पढ़ लो बेटा, देखो तो पढ़ लो, देखो करो. तुम थोड़ा सा आर्टिकल का वहां छोटा छोटा जस्ट लिख दो. तुम्हें क्वेश्चन जो पूछा गया, देखो क्वेश्चन पूछा गया, why the tribals are called the scheduled tribe, what are some other constitutional manifestations. ठीक है बेटा, ठीक है. थोड़ा सा कास्ट एंड पॉलिटिक्स देख लेना, है ना. वी हैव नॉट डिक्टेटेड, विल सी इट, दैट इफ वी कुड डू दैट विल सी इट. अब यहां से थोड़ा सा मॉडर्न सोसाइटी की तरफ बढ़ता हूं. एंड वन ऑफ द इंपॉर्टेंट सेलिंग फीचर्स ऑफ इंडियन सोसाइटी विल बी लुकिंग एट would basically be talked about in terms of that Indian society is a secular society. No denying the fact here. Whatever the debate is going on, whatever the certain kind of communal violences which has occurred, reoccurred in Indian context, not denying the fact that India is a secular society. And in this very perspective, we will basically be looking at secularism in detail. Right from 2013 till 2023, when you look at most of the questions which have been asked, except 1 year 2014 where they had asked the question, provide a comparative analysis in terms of the Western and Indian secularism. Question on secularism has been very typical. They have also asked in terms of the sects. They have asked in terms of the certain kind of philosophical traditions. And we'll also be approaching from there in terms of understanding our secularism as a concept, because the moment you go to the deep lower end of the syllabus in Indian society, first paper, you find about the 4 words, 4 concepts written in a row. Secularism, communalism. And I've always said that even if your syllabus could not have content communalism, any one of us whosoever is talking about the secularism could not have finished our understanding of secularism unless and until we talked about that what challenges secularism. And the moment you look at what challenges secularism, we could have talked about the perspective or the concept of communalism. So secularism, communalism, regionalism and social empowerment. We'll pick up these 4 and we'll also try to look at that how the Indian society and the certain kind of dilemmas, certain kind of paradoxes in Indian society could be understood by this. ये काम कर रहा है ना, 5 दिन करवाओ, है? जब तक दोबारा आता हूँ लौट के, है? कहीं दाना पानी कहीं और का है, बाहर पर मैं निकला हुआ हूँ तो घूमते हुए जाऊंगा, है ना. कुछ और लोगों को जरूरत है कहीं और दूसरे शहर में, थोड़ा घूमते हुए जाऊं तो डीप जाऊंगा, सस्टेन करना है ना। और प्रॉब्लम का तो मुझे बोलने का है, क्योंकि मेरा प्रॉब्लम मैं ही सॉल्व कर सकता हूं, ठीक है ना। एकदम डीप जा रहा हूं, पूछूंगा नहीं तुम लोगों से कुछ, एकदम उल्टा जवाब दोगे है। अगर मैं पूछूं व्हाट इज सेक्युलरिज्म, डरो डरो मत, बोलो मेरे साथ। है ऑल रिलीजन। आप लोगों को नहीं लगता कि आप लोग ने जितना भी आंसर मुझे दिया वो वन डायमेंशनल आंसर था? नो स्टेट रिलीजन अगर तुम बोल रहे हो, इसका मतलब है टॉकिंग अबाउट द वॉल ऑफ सेपरेशन बिटवीन चर्च एंड स्टेट। Is it? Does the Indian Constitution does not recognize religion? There will be no religion as such which could be termed as a state religion. Rather, the state will be having the equidistance with all religion. No matters of governance and polity should be dictated by religious power. Right? However, it does not mean that the state cannot intervene into the religious matter. Alright? पॉलिटी पढ़ा है, थोड़ा सा पढ़ा है। इस्माइल फारूकी वर्सेस यूनियन ऑफ इंडिया 1984 और 1993 ईयर में भूल रहा हूं बेटा। राइट? एसपी मित्तल वर्सेस यूनियन ऑफ इंडिया। To manage the secular affairs of any mutt, gurdwara, mosque, masjid, church, a state can intervene into it and it should not be termed as anti-secular. Right? A state can acquire land belonging to any mutt, gurdwara, mosque, temple and church and it should not be termed as anti-secular. है? लोचा है, ठीक है। तो थोड़ा सा वेस्टर्न कंसेप्ट से चलेंगे और थोड़ा सा इंडियन कंसेप्ट से चलेंगे, ठीक है। पहले मुझे बना लेने दो, ठीक है। अब दूसरा पार्ट पहले समझना बेटा, बाद में लिखना, पहले समझना। मैंने क्या लिखा? व्हाट इज सेक्युलरिज्म। अब यहां से जब भी तुमको कोई वर्ड दिखे बेटा, इज्म, ISM, सीधा सीधा एक वर्ड आना कि इज्म मीन्स इडियोलॉजी, राइट। सो एक सीधा लाइन बोलता हूं कि सेक्युलरिज्म इज एन इडियोलॉजी which tries to understand the interface between state and religion. The interface between state and religion could be viewed from the three perspectives. Proximity. जैसे ब्रिटेन जब पढ़ते होंगे तो ब्रिटेन का जो मोनार्क है वो प्रोटेस्टेंट रिलीजन से आता है, एक पर्टिकुलर रिलीजन से आता है, ठीक है। मोनार्कियल डेमोक्रेसी है वहां पे, ठीक है मेरी बात। वेस्टर्न सोसाइटी इन जनरल देखोगे तो वॉल ऑफ सेपरेशन दिखता है. देयर इज अ वॉल ऑफ सेपरेशन बिटवीन चर्च एंड स्टेट. इंडिया में प्रिंसिपल ऑफ न्यूट्रलिटी दिखती है. तो ये 3 तरीका है देखने का सेक्युलरिज्म को. ठीक है. बट एट द लेवल ऑफ whom वी कैन लुक एट. Who is responsible to manage secularism first in India? किसको सेक्युलरिज्म इंडिया में पहले लाना है? हमको नहीं लाना है. हम तो रिलीजियस हैं. हम तो मंदिर जाएंगे, घंटा बजाएंगे, मस्जिद जाएंगे, मत्था टेकेंगे, सजदा करूंगा उधर. स्टेट को क्लियर है. इसका मतलब द फर्स्ट ऑनर्स टू मेंटेन सेक्युलरिज्म इन इंडिया लाइज विद द पॉलिटिकल स्ट्रक्चर. ठीक है. तब इसका मतलब क्या हो गया बेटा? इसका मतलब हो गया कि we need to understand secularism at the different level, at the level of individual. I, the individual, is religious. I am required to be secular, which I may not in my social relationship. नहीं रखता मैं तुम्हें दूसरे धर्म के साथ, नहीं रख जाओ, मैं अपने धर्म से बात करूंगा. Is it a legal offense? So secularism has to be looked at the level of individual. ठीक है. Secularism has also to be looked at the level of society. Why it is a multi-religious society. And not denying the fact, beta. It is the fact that India is home to almost all religions which have their presence in the world. तो कल हम लोगों ने क्या कहा था? इंडिक नॉन इंडिक बोला था. इंडिक religions are those which emerge in India. Non-Indic religions are those which emerge outside India and in a different historical phases they enter to the Indian soil. Clear है? And the political structure. ठीक है. So level of understanding किसके होगा बेटा यहां पे? ठीक है ना. 2018 में तुमसे क्वेश्चन पूछा, व्हाट फ्रांस कैन लर्न फ्रॉम द इंडियन सेक्युलरिज्म. ऐसा क्वेश्चन. ठीक है. लेसाइज का कंसेप्ट है बेटा वो. दैट इज द कंसेप्ट ऑफ लेसाइज. प्योर कंसेप्चुअल कंसेप्ट था वो. इतना मेहनत आपको मेरे साथ करना पड़ेगा. मैंने कल भी बोला था, आज फिर बोला, आई एम नॉट हियर, आई एम नॉट एंटरिंग द क्लास टू मेक यू हैप्पी. आई एम हियर टू मेक यू डिस्टेबलाइज. इतना आपको करना पड़ेगा. कल आपको मेरे क्लास के बाद आपको इंडियन सोसाइटी का क्वेश्चन समझ में नहीं आ रहा, आप बिना मतलब का यू विल बी सेइंग दैट आई हैव नॉट अंडरस्टूड इट. नो, यू डू नॉट हैव अ राइट टू टार्निश माय इमेज. ठीक है. अब 2 लाइन बोलता हूं, दोनों को समझना बेटा. इन अ वेस्टर्न सोसाइटी देयर इज अ कंप्लीट वॉल ऑफ सेपरेशन बिटवीन चर्च एंड स्टेट. सुनते जाना बेटा मुझे ठीक से. An individual is free to profess or not to profess at all any faith without having any legal or social compulsion. ठीक है. ये इंडिविजुअल है बेटा. ऑलराइट. तो बनाएंगे. इंडिविजुअल इज फ्री टू क्लींज टू एनी फेथ. मेरा चॉइस है. कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनली इंडिया में मेरा चॉइस है. इफ आई वांट टू प्रोफेस एनी फेथ, आई एम कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनली फ्री टू प्रोफेस एनी फेथ. लीगली, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनली. बट द रिपरकशंस ऑफ सोसाइटी वुड बी डिफरेंट. है ना. व्हेनेवर देयर हैज बीन इश्यूज ऑफ कन्वर्जन इन इंडिया, वी हैव फाउंड अबाउट द काउंटर दैट इज कॉल्ड रेट्रोवर्सल मूवमेंट, जिसको हम लोग आजकल न्यूज़पेपर की भाषा में घर वापसी बोलते हैं ना. और हर कन्वर्जन का एक उल्टा उसके साथ रेट्रोवर्सल मूवमेंट होगा. So individual is free to profess. And a constitution has also provided you to practice, to promote, to propagate your religion. Article 25, 26, 27, 28. Along with the certain rights of minorities. Article 29, 1 and 30. ठीक है? माइनॉरिटी का दो एक्सप्रेशन है कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में बेटा, रिलीजियस एंड लिंग्विस्टिक. जब लिंग्विस्टिक बोलेंगे तो आर्टिकल 350A 350B होगा. But in major perspective, the moment we talk about minority, we always consider minority in a religious perspective. ठीक है ना? Who are minority? आज मैं क्लियर करके ही उठूंगा. ठीक है? Minority has come from the Latin word minor with the suffix ity, meaning the smaller one in the component of two. है ना? The moment you say a smaller one in the component of two, it means minority is a relative concept. Who is considered minority in a one situation may be majority in other situation. होगा ना बेटा? तो minority concept has to be viewed relatively. दो के टोटल में जो छोटा है उसको माइनॉरिटी बोलेंगे. तो भाई ये तो सर्कमस्टांस हो गया, सिचुएशन चेंज हुआ, उसके डिफिनेशन बदल जाएंगे. अब वेस्ट में बेटा, हाथ को देखना मेरा, वेस्ट में ये सोशल है बेटा. सोशल का मतलब क्या हो गया? इन ए सोसाइटी देयर आर मल्टी रिलीजन. अभी इसको धीरे से समझ लो कि बनाऊंगा अभी. और ये पॉलिटी है बेटा, स्टेट है. अब वेस्ट में कैसे चलेगा? वेस्ट में ऐसे चलेगा बेटा. इंडिविजुअल टू सोशल टू पॉलिटिकल. ठीक है ना? इंडिया में पॉलिटिकल से चलेगा. मैं तो रिलीजियस हूं यार. विच रिलीजन? वाई आर यू मुस्लिम? इसका मतलब हो गया माई रिलीजियस आइडेंटिटी इज अ कलेक्टिव आइडेंटिटी है. ये बहुत अच्छा होता. किसी पूछो सर यू आर, हमने हिंदू, उसे पूछो वाई आर यू हिंदू? So I'm born to the parents who are Hindu. है ना? कलेक्टिव है बेटा. होगा ना? सोशल डायमेंशन है उसका. क्लियर है? ये डिफरेंस तुमको वेस्ट और इंडिया में समझना होगा. सो इंडिया में मैंने क्या बोला कि आई एज एन इंडिविजुअल कुड बी रिलीजियस. देयर आर सो मेनी रिलीजियस इन a society. So the first onus to maintain secularism in India lies with the state, not with me as an individual. Clear है? I in my private life could be religious. What is required in part of me as an individual? When I come to the public fora, I should not be intervened and dictated by my own religion. Why? Because there is a possibility of the people who may belong to the different faith, and I'll have to respect that faith. Isn't it? तो पहला ये डायग्राम इधर इंडिया में ऐसे चलेगा बेटा. PSI. वेस्ट में कैसा चला? ISP. ये तो 2014 का क्वेश्चन है बेटा. ये डायग्राम है ना? नंबर मांगने से नहीं मिलेगा बेटा, नंबर लिखने से मिलेगा. यू विल हैव टू मेक देम गिव यू मार्क्स. अभी लेवल देख लिया, यहां हो गई, तो इसका मतलब हो गया ठीक है. ये इसी से ये सब किसी वेस्टर्न इंडियंस डोमिनेशन देखेंगे. अब इसको देख लिए तो इधर क्या बड़े मोटे तौर पे क्या देखेंगे बेटा? 1976 42nd अमेंडमेंट, इंसर्शन ऑफ द टर्म सेकुलर इन अ प्रीएम्बल. 1944, 78, 1978, 44 was made the basic. तो तुमको केशवानंदन भारती से मिनरल मिल जितना पढ़े होगे, तो हम बोल देते हैं कि सेक्युलरिज्म इज बेसिकली अ बेसिक टीनेट ऑफ द इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन, और बेसिक टीनेट को नहीं छुएंगे. ठीक है, ये डिबेट इधर चलती रहेगी. क्लियर है? अब क्या इंडियन सोसाइटी 1976 के पहले सेकुलर नहीं था? Am I making my question clear? We need to understand a certain kind of philosophical rhetoricians characterizing the secular character of the Indian society. It's not a new phenomena. बड़ी एकेडमिक पॉलिटिक्स में कहीं कहीं लिख दी गई है कि द आइडिया ऑफ सेकुलरिज्म इमर्ज टू इंडिया व्हेन इंडिया केम इन कांटेक्ट विद द वेस्ट. नो, इवन एट द टाइम ऑफ अशोका धम्मा, even at time of Din Ilahi Akbar, we have found about the religious congregation and collectivity of the faiths together. And there is a one philosophical tradition in India. Ekam sad vipra bauda vedanti. Truth is one, the wise call it differently. Alright? And we should not forget that when we talk about the different religion, we talk about India as a plural society. Pluralism in India has to be viewed not merely from the interdimension, it has also to be understood from intradimension. है? A different religion के आने के पहले भी हम plural थे. Right? Hinduism has been defined as a federation of faith. And the moment you say Hinduism has been defined as a federation of faith, then Vishnuites, Shivites, Bhagavatites, they all have lived together. So, Ekam Sad, truth is one. Vipra Bauda Vedanti. The wise call it differently. Alright? Bahujan Hitaye, Bahujan Sukhaye. Alright? गांधीन कोटेशन तो देखे होगे, सर्वधर्म वाली. वसुदेव कुटुंबकम. The entire world is a family writ large. These are the certain philosophical rhetoricians. These philosophical rhetoricians allowed for the different faiths to come and be incorporated in the Indian soil. ठीक है मेरी बात? तो यहां से भी करेंगे क्या बेटा? ठीक है, रोज लड़ाई करते हैं हम लोग, हिंदू मुसलमान. ठीक है, आप लोग का प्रॉब्लम हिंदू क्रिश्चियन, हिंदू सिख. ठीक है, डिस्पाइट दिस देयर आर certain basic tenets of Indian secularism which could be reference model to the West. तब यहां से क्या करेंगे हम लोग? है ना? इसी से क्वेश्चन निकला बेटा फ्रांस वाला, that what France can learn from the Indian secularism. है ना? खासकर सार्ली हाब्दो इंसिडेंट अगर आपको याद हो, जहां गमर साहब का कैरिकेचर बना दिया गया था, है ना? वहां से फ्रांस में एक स्टेट का इंटरवेंशन शुरू होता है, पूरी पॉलिसी खत्म हो गई बेटा. ठीक है ना? 1905 में उन्होंने एक पॉलिसी उठाई थी, इसको बोलते हैं द प्रिंसिपल ऑफ लेसाइट. उसके ठीक अगेंस्ट में चले गए. कभी बुर्का बैन कर दिए, कभी यारमूल जो जूस यहां पहनते हैं बच्चा सब, छोटा वाला पगड़ी व्हाइट वाला, राइट, कभी स्कार्फ बैन कर दिए, कुछ कल्ट्स इनको बैन कर दिया गया, और यहां से एक क्वेश्चन निकला. ठीक है मेरी बात यहां से? अब यह जब कर लोगे तब रिट्रेशन मीन्स विच इज रिपीटेड टाइम एंड अगेन। अब इसका कोई और दूसरा एंड सिनोनिम नहीं है, वही जानना होगा, है ना। मैंने 91 में ग्रेजुएशन हिंदी में की है। आई एम प्योर फ्रॉम हिंदी मीडियम। भाग गया था दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी से, साला टेबल कुर्सी सब अंग्रेजी बोल रहा था वहां, भाग गया घर में। है अंग्रेजी नहीं बोलने के चक्कर में पीछे बैठना शुरू किया, बैठा टीचर पे, मैं उधर चला गया पीछे। हॉस्टल में सब बोला कि नोवेल पढ़ो, नोवेल से अंग्रेज सुधरेगा। अरे सब खराब खराब नोवेल से पढ़ा, पीछे बैठ के हॉस्टल में कैसा नोवेल पढ़ता है सब। साला और बदमाश हो गया मैं, पहले से बदमाश था और बदमाश हो गया, डिग्री और बदमाश कैसे, ठीक है। तो जो ऐसा वर्ड हो, रिट्रेशन का मतलब हो गया विच इज रिपीटेड टाइम एंड अगेन। अब चैलेंजेस बेटा, चैलेंजेस दो तरह से, एक तो चैलेंज कल्चरल प्रैक्टिस का है, ठीक है। दो लाइन को सुनना बेटा। कैन आई मेक अ लाइन दैट सेक्युलरिज्म प्रोवाइड अस द राइट टू प्रैक्टिस आवर कल्चर, होगा ना। अगर डिफरेंट फेथ्स हैं तो उनके कल्चर भी अलग अलग होंगे, तो कल्चरल प्रैक्टिसेस को प्रैक्टिस करने का राइट सेक्युलरिज्म दिया, राइट। But there would certainly be certain cultural practices in which we need to intervene, होगा ना। जैसे मुझे मालूम नहीं दाऊदी बोहरा कम्युनिटी के बारे में जानते हैं नहीं, है ना। बॉम्बे हाई कोर्ट में केस भी चल रहा है, उसको फीमेल जेनाइटल म्यूटिलेशन बोलते हैं, ठीक है। संथारा जेंट्स में, जल्लीकट्टू, ट्रिपल तलाक, है ना। So it means there are certain cultural practices in which जुडिशियरी और पॉलिटिकल सिस्टम विल इंटरवीन। तो ये चैलेंजेस दो तरह से होगा बेटा, एक तो कल्चरल प्रैक्टिस का, ठीक, और दूसरा सबसे बड़ा चैलेंज है कम्युनलिज्म का, ठीक है ना। इससे भी क्वेश्चन है बहुत सा, और ये क्वेश्चन है, तो मैं यहां से क्वेश्चन है बेटा, ये क्वेश्चन है फ्रांस वाला, ये क्वेश्चन है, दो क्वेश्चन है बेटा। एक तो सेक्ट पूछ दिया, ठीक है, पता है सेक्ट क्या है, कोई बोलेगा, डरो मत बोलो। अच्छा ऐसा इंडिया में सुने होगा ना, बहुत बार बोलते हैं धर्मनिरपेक्ष, पंथ निरपेक्ष भी बोलते हैं ना। तो तुमको रिलीजियस ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस को जानना होगा, चर्च, सेक्ट, डिनोमिनेशन, कल्ट, इक्लेसिया, है ना। तुम लोग क्वेश्चन बैंक क्यों नहीं देखते हो? पिछले साल का क्वेश्चन है बेटा सेक्ट का। महाराष्ट्र की तरफ जाएंगे बुद्धिस्ट ज्यादा मिलेंगे, है ना। एग्रीकल्चरिस्ट तुमको जैन नहीं मिलेंगे, नहीं मिलेंगे ना बेटा। तो इसका मतलब है कि कुछ रिलीजन जो आया, जैसे बुद्धिज्म आया, जैनिज्म आया, सिखिज्म आया, दे केम इन ऑपोजिशन टू हिंदुइज्म, है ना। सो जो रिलीजन इस्टेब्लिश रिलीजन के अगेंस्ट में खड़ा उसको सेक्ट बोलते हैं, है। उसी की हिंदी हम लोग बोलते हैं पंथ निरपेक्ष, ठीक है। तब ये यहां से कुछ क्वेश्चन बनेगा, ठीक है। और जब यहां कर लेंगे बेटा तो यहां से कम्युनिज्म को शुरू करें, ठीक है। इसको ड्रॉ करो हमारे कब तक। आई जस्ट टेक 2 मिनट, आई कम बैक, आई एम आल्सो गेटिंग अ कॉल फ्रॉम होम।